Hey everyone, and welcome to this Practical Workshop Explainer. Today, we are tackling something incredibly powerful. We're looking at those deep-seated automatic reactions that keep us feeling totally stuck. And we're going to break down a surprisingly simple methodology to break free from them. Basically, we're going to be dismantling your internal mental walls. So if you've ever felt like you're just, trapped on a behavioral loop, repeating the exact same stressful patterns in your relationships or your work, well, you are absolutely in the right place.
To kick things off, our source provides this slightly absurd but very humorous hook. It says, you could literally hide in a storage closet with a box of Uncrustables, but wherever you go, there you are. It's so true, right? You can move to a new country, you can change your friend group, or get a completely new job. We try to escape our circumstances only to find out that our old triggers, they follow us everywhere. If you don't change who you are internally, you're eventually going to find yourself triggered in the exact same old ways, feeling completely out of control.
Okay, let's dive right into this. Here's our practical workshop agenda for today. First, identifying your personal wall. Second, the 5% rule. Third, 3 everyday 5% shifts. And fourth, the compounding trajectory.
All right, section 1, identifying your personal wall. Before we can change our behavior, we really need to understand the psychological barrier that keeps us crashing into the same problems over and over. Consider this concept of the wall. It actually comes from Mario Andretti's famous Formula One racing analogy. The rule in racing is incredibly simple. If you don't want to crash the car, do not focus on the wall. Why? Because your car goes where your eyes go. And you know what? This is exactly how our subconscious works. If we're constantly scanning our environment for threats or rejection or danger, we unconsciously steer our lives right into those very outcomes. We literally end up creating the reality we are desperately trying to avoid. So let's figure this out. What does your wall look like? Let's use this diagnostic checklist from our source to help you identify it. For some folks, it's parental programming. Like, if you grew up with unpredictable parents, your nervous system is wired for hypervigilance, right? You're constantly second-guessing your partner. For others, it's past abandonment. To protect yourself, you might just push people away before they even get a chance to reject you. Maybe your wall is constantly scanning for physical threats or danger in literally every room you enter. Or perhaps it's a destructive dating narrative, where you blindly overinvest in someone way too quickly, totally primed for heartbreak. The point is, whatever you are constantly looking for, you will find it. I actually want you to take a deliberate pause right here. Seriously, think about your own life. What is a specific situation where you feel completely hijacked by your normal automatic response? Where does your nervous system just take over and steer you straight into the wall? Hold that specific situation in your mind for a second.
Moving on to section 2, the 5% rule.
Okay, now that you've got that situation in your mind, let's look at the practical methodology for overcoming that exact wall. The absolutely crucial point is captured right here. Change is hard. It's incredibly hard. When we're highly anxious or triggered, trying to magically transform into some completely confident Zen master is, well, it's impossible. But here is the secret. You don't need a magical transformation. You just need to realize that you have the agency to do something slightly, just 5% different than your normal default reaction.
So here is your daily step-by-step guide to actually making this happen. Step 1, recognize your fight or flight trigger right in the moment. Just acknowledge that, hey, my system is currently flooded with adrenaline. Step 2, remind yourself that your behavioral train tracks are not fixed. You might feel totally locked on to a certain path, but different is actually possible. And step 3, choose an action that is just marginally different than your default. It doesn't have to be perfect at all. It just has to be 5% different from what you would normally do.
Let's just pause on this question for a second. Can you accept that your current normal reality isn't the only one available to you? Because honestly, realizing that you aren't permanently trapped on your current train tracks, that is the key that unlocks this entire process. All right, section 3, 3 everyday 5% shifts.
Let's test this methodology out against 3 highly relatable everyday social triggers. Starting with scenario 1, feeling left out. Our source shares this case study of a client whose guy didn't invite her to a gathering. On the left side of our comparison, we see her normal fight or flight reaction. Her fight instinct sent this really angry, abrupt text, "Why didn't you invite me?" And then when he offered to call her later, her flight instinct kicked in to just reject him first. She said, "Don't bother." Boom. She drove right into her wall of abandonment. Now look at the right side, the 5% shift. What if, instead of saying "don't bother," she just passively aggressively said, "Sure. Look, it's still cold, it's definitely not perfect, but hey, it's 5% different, and it means they actually get on the phone later." Or what if she realized she overreacted and reached out later to apologize? That tiny shift prevents the immediate destruction of a connection.
And this brilliantly illustrates scenario 2, workplace overwhelm. On the left, we've got the normal reaction to a massive to-do list, which is usually catastrophizing. You start believing everything has to be done today or total disaster will strike, proving how inadequate you are. But check out the 5% shift on the right. It changes the game. Instead of spiraling, you simply remind yourself that, sure, while some things are due today, a lot of things actually have a 5 to 10-year timeline. You realize there is marginally more time than your panic brain is suggesting. That instantly reduces that severe, paralyzing stress.
Okay, let's look at scenario 3, unanswered texts. Oh man, this triggers massive early dating anxiety for so many of us. The normal reaction on the left is assuming the absolute worst intentions. They're arrogant, they're rude, or maybe, actually, scratch that, you probably even try to diagnose them with a full-blown personality disorder right there from your phone. The 5% shift on the right? You just send one more text, or make a quick call to hear their actual tone of voice. You apply a marginally more generous lens to their behavior. You remember times when you yourself were busy or abrupt without meaning any harm. You're seeking clarity rather than instantly building a defensive wall.
Which brings us to our final section, the compounding trajectory.
So, why do these tiny, seemingly insignificant 5% shifts matter so much in the grand scheme of things? To explain this, our source uses a really fantastic analogy. Imagine two motorcycles leaving the exact same starting point, but their trajectories are just 5 degrees apart. At the starting line, the difference is practically invisible. It doesn't look like much at all.
But the compounding effect of those 5 degrees? It is massive. First off, making a 5% shift proves to your brain that different is actually possible, which is basically a miracle for a brain that thought it was permanently stuck. If you were just 5% less reactive today, 5% more generous in interpreting others, and maybe 5% braver, over time, just like those two motorcycles, you don't just get a slightly better result today. You wind up in a completely different destination in your life over the long term. You prove, once and for all, that you are not stuck.
So, I want to leave you with this final provocative thought from our explainer today. Think about that situation you had on your mind earlier. What is something you want to do just slightly differently in that scenario right now? Remember, you don't have to change everything. You just have to change 5%. Decide what that marginal shift is going to be today and start steering your car away from the wall. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and I highly encourage you to put this into practice right now.